Somewhere in Saudi Arabia right now, a man is driving a 30-year-old Nissan Patrol with 600,000 kilometers across a sand dune at full throttle. And he trusts that truck more than the $90,000 SUV his neighbor bought last month. Someone else is driving a $200,000 Mercedes through sand like he's personally offended by dunes. 12 old SUVs the Middle East trusts more than anything built today. Let's count up. Number 12, Mitsubishi Pajero, 1982 to 2006. The Mitsubishi Pajero is the SUV that every Middle Eastern family bought when the father wanted a desert-capable truck, and the mother wanted him to stop pretending they could afford a Land Cruiser. It worked. The Pajero won the Paris-Dakar Rally 12 times, earned a Guinness World Record for most manufacturer victories in the event's history, and then quietly became the most popular budget desert SUV across Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Iraq, where it proved that you didn't need a Toyota budget to earn the desert's respect. You just needed a Mitsubishi and the willingness to find out what it could do. The first-generation Pajero with its turbo diesel and part-time four-wheel drive offered genuine dune capability at a price point that made ownership accessible to teachers, mid-level government employees, and engineers. The Middle Eastern professional middle class who needed a weekend desert vehicle without taking out a second mortgage. The Pajero's reliability wasn't at the Land Cruiser level. Nothing was. But it was close enough that the price difference became the deciding factor for millions of families over 3 decades. In the Gulf, the Pajero earned a nickname among mechanics that captures its position perfectly. The Land Cruiser's younger brother who shows up to every family gathering uninvited and somehow always has a good time. You can find clean first and second generation Pajeros for $3,000 to $15,000 across the region. The cheapest way to buy genuine desert credibility in the Middle East. The Land Cruiser's uninvited younger brother. The next SUV wasn't built for the desert at all, but Saudi Arabia decided it was going there anyway. Number 11, Chevrolet Tahoe, 2000 to 2014. The Chevrolet Tahoe is the SUV that America built for suburban school runs and highway cruising, and then watched in confused admiration as Saudi Arabia took it into the desert and drove it like they were personally offended by the idea of sand. The Tahoe was never engineered for dune bashing. It was engineered for pulling boats in Texas and carrying families to soccer practice in Ohio. But the 5.3-liter Vortec 5.8 produced enough low-end torque to climb dunes that had no business being climbed. And the body-on-frame chassis absorbed the kind of punishment that would have sent a unibody crossover to the scrapyard after a single weekend. In Saudi Arabia specifically, the Tahoe developed a following among desert drivers who wanted American V8 muscle without the Land Cruiser price tag, and who appreciated that GM parts were cheap, plentiful, and available at every workshop from Riyadh to Jeddah. The Tahoe is the SUV that shows up to a desert gathering looking like it took a wrong turn from a shopping mall parking lot, and then proceeds to keep pace with trucks specifically built for the sand it shouldn't work. But in the hands of a Saudi driver who learned to drive on dunes before he learned to drive on roads, it works well enough to embarrass vehicles costing twice as much. You can find clean examples for $5,000 to $18,000 across the Gulf, and the V8 parts network is essentially limitless. America built it for soccer practice. Saudi Arabia took it dune bashing. The next SUV weighs less than some motorcycles, and it conquers terrain that full-size trucks can't physically reach. Number 10, Suzuki Jimny, 1998 to 2018. The Suzuki Jimny weighs 1,100 kilograms, roughly the same as a large horse, produces 85 horsepower from a 1.3-liter four-cylinder, and has absolutely no business being on a list alongside vehicles with V8 engines and military-grade chassis. And yet here it is, because in Oman, the Jimny conquers mountain roads so narrow, so steep, and so exposed that the Patrol and Land Cruiser physically cannot fit. The Jimny is 1,100 kilograms of pure disrespect to every full-size SUV that ever claimed to be the best off-roader on the planet. In the Hajar Mountains of Oman, villages sit at elevations that require 40 minutes of continuous switchback climbing on roads that would make a goat reconsider its life choices. Full-size SUVs can't navigate the hairpin turns. They can't squeeze between the rock walls. and they definitely can't reverse direction on a cliff-edge track without a 3-point turn that puts 2 wheels over the edge. The Jimny does all of this with a turning circle so tight it could spin inside a living room. The part-time 4-wheel drive system with low range gives the Jimny a crawl capability that rivals vehicles 3 times its size, simply because it's dragging a third of the weight. Omani mountain drivers, Saudi trail runners, and Jordanian backcountry explorers all discovered the same truth independently. The Jimny goes places where expensive trucks get stuck, do damage, or simply don't fit. You can find clean examples for $5,000 to $15,000, 1,100 kilograms of mountain goat energy. The next SUV is the one you buy when your father won't lend you the Patrol, and it's secretly almost as good. Number 9. Nissan Xterra, 2005 to 2015. The Nissan Xterra is the SUV you buy in the Gulf when you're 23 years old. Your father won't lend you the family Patrol, and you need something that can handle a weekend dune run without requiring a weekend's salary to fill the tank. The Xterra was Nissan's answer to the question, what if we built a Patrol for people who can't afford a Patrol? And across the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Kuwait, an entire generation of young desert drivers learned to dune bash in Xterras before graduating to the full-size trucks their fathers drove. The 4.0-liter VQ40 DEV6, derived from Nissan's award-winning VQ engine family for Mercedes-Benz, produced 261 horsepower and delivered the kind of responsive, rev-happy power that made the Xterra genuinely fun, in a way that the workhouse Patrol never pretended to be. The body-on-frame, chassis, and solid rear axle gave it legitimate off-road credentials, and the roof rack, with its integrated first aid kit compartment and channel mounts, suggested that Nissan expected buyers to actually use this truck in the wild rather than just drive it to the mall. In Gulf weekend desert convoys, the Xterra was always the truck driven by the youngest member of the group, the one with the most enthusiasm, the least experience, and the most to prove. It rewarded that enthusiasm by keeping up with Patrols and Land Cruisers driven by men 3 times its driver's age. You can find clean examples for $4,000 to $12,000 across the Gulf. The young man's first desert truck. The next SUV costs 10 times as much, and its owners dune bash in vehicles worth more than some people's houses. Number 8. Mercedes-Benz G-Wagen. 1979 to present, the Mercedes-Benz G-Wagen is the only SUV on this list where the owner might be wearing a $5,000 watch while driving through sand dunes at speeds that would void every warranty Mercedes has ever written. In the Gulf states, the G-Wagen occupies a position that no other SUV can claim. It's simultaneously a genuine off-road vehicle with military-grade hardware and a status symbol that parks comfortably next to Rolls-Royces in Dubai driveways. Most SUVs choose one identity. The G-Wagen chose both and somehow made it work. The G-Wagen entered the Middle East through military contracts. The Saudi Arabian National Guard and the UAE Armed Forces deployed stripped-down W461 versions, long before the civilian model became a $200,000 fashion accessory. That military heritage gave the G-Wagen a credibility in the Gulf that purely civilian SUVs couldn't replicate. Every wealthy buyer who took one into the dunes knew they were driving a vehicle that had been proven by soldiers before it was approved by stylists. The 3 locking differentials, the ladder frame chassis, and the diesel engines that powered European taxi fleets past 500,000 miles gave the G-Wagen genuine desert capability beneath the luxury. In Dubai and Abu Dhabi, there's a specific type of driver who takes a vehicle worth more than most people's apartments and drives it through sand like he's personally testing it for the military. That driver is always in a G-Wagen, the only SUV where dune bashing costs as much as a house deposit. The next one doesn't care about luxury at all. It just built the entire modern Middle East without asking for credit. Number 7. Toyota Hilux, 1988 to 2005. The Toyota Hilux is the vehicle that built the modern Middle East, not metaphorically, literally. And it did it without ever receiving a single moment of the emotional devotion that Gulf car culture showers on the Patrol and Land Cruiser. Nobody writes love letters to a Hilux. Nobody names their children after one. Nobody has a Hilux sticker on the back window of their daily driver. But every construction site in Dubai, every oil pipeline in Saudi Arabia, every water delivery route in Oman, and every agricultural operation in Jordan ran on Hilux trucks during the decades when these countries transformed from sand into skylines. The Hilux earned the Middle East's trust through the most unglamorous method possible. It showed up at 5 in the morning, worked a 12-hour shift in 50-degree heat, and did it again the next day without appearing on anyone's wish list or generating a single enthusiast forum post. The diesel engines ran on whatever fuel was available. The parts were stocked at every Toyota dealer and independent workshop across the region. The repair costs were so low that fleet operators treated maintenance as a rounding error rather than a budget item. Top Gear famously tried to kill a Hilux on television, drowning it, burning it, dropping it from a crane, and it started on the first try every time. The Middle East already knew. They'd been trying to kill them through daily abuse for decades, and the Hilux simply refused to cooperate with the concept of dying. Nobody writes love letters to a Hilux, everybody depends on one. The next SUV is the family desert cruiser that America forgot about, but the Gulf never did. Number 6, Toyota Sequoia, 2001 to 2007. The Toyota Sequoia is the SUV that America built as a family hauler, marketed as a suburban school-run vehicle, and then watched as the Middle East adopted it as a legitimate desert cruiser that could carry 8 people across sand while air conditioning all of them, a combination of capabilities that no other vehicle in its price range could match. The Sequoia shares its platform with the Toyota Tundra pickup, runs a 4.7-liter V8 that produces the kind of low-end torque sand driving demands, and has a payload capacity that means a full family with camping gear doesn't even make the suspension notice. In Saudi Arabia and the UAE, the Sequoia found its niche as the vehicle for families who needed Land Cruiser capability at a significantly lower price point, and who discovered that Toyota had accidentally built a desert vehicle while trying to build a Chevrolet Tahoe competitor. The Sequoia is the minivan that pretends it's a Land Cruiser, and gets away with it because the chassis, the drivetrain, and the Toyota reliability underneath are fundamentally over-engineered for its intended purpose, which means they're perfectly engineered for the Gulf's unintended purpose of hauling families across dunes every weekend. One Saudi owner described his Sequoia as the ugliest truck my wife refuses to let me sell because it's never broken down in 12 years. You can find clean first-generation examples for $5,000 to $15,000, less than a set of tires on a new Range Rover, for a truck that will still be running when the Range Rover is on its third air suspension replacement. The minivan disguised as a desert truck. The next SUV is the one Toyota killed, and the Gulf has been punishing them for it ever since. Number 5, Toyota FJ Cruiser, 2006 to 2014. The Toyota FJ Cruiser is the SUV that was supposed to be a nostalgic novelty, a retro-styled throwback to the original FJ40 Land Cruiser, and instead became one of the most fanatically collected and aggressively abused vehicles in Middle Eastern history. In the Gulf states, the FJ Cruiser achieved something almost no other vehicle has ever accomplished. It has never depreciated. Clean used FJ Cruisers in the UAE and Saudi Arabia routinely sell for more than their original purchase price, a phenomenon that defies every rule of automotive economics and reflects a level of regional obsession that economists would classify as clinically irrational. The FJ earns that obsession through a combination the Gulf market values above all else: genuine off-road capability wrapped in a personality that no other modern Toyota possesses. The 4.0-liter 1GR-FEV6 is bulletproof. The body-on-frame chassis with a solid rear axle and available locking rear differential gives the FJ genuine dune capability, and the retro styling makes it the only Toyota that people actually want to be seen in rather than merely depend on. UAE dune bashers run FJ Cruisers alongside patrols and Land Cruisers in weekend desert convoys, and the FJ consistently keeps pace with vehicles costing twice as much while looking like it's having more fun doing it. Toyota killed the FJ Cruiser in 2014. The Gulf responded by refusing to let prices fall, the automotive equivalent of a protest movement conducted entirely through resale values. Toyota killed it. The Gulf never forgave them. The next SUV is the family expedition truck that every Gulf father talks about the way other men talk about a first love. Number 4, Toyota Land Cruiser 80 Series, 1990 to 1997. The Toyota Land Cruiser 80 Series is the SUV that every Gulf father talks about, the way other men talk about an ex they never got over, with a mixture of love, regret, and the quiet admission that nothing since has ever quite measured up. The 80 Series was the truck that carried the camping gear across the Rub al Khali, towed the boat to the coast, drove the children to school on Monday, and did all of it without ever requiring its owner to wonder whether it would start. In the Middle East, the 80 Series didn't create memories. It was the vehicle that made memories possible. The 80 Series was the first Land Cruiser to offer full-time four-wheel drive, coil springs on all four corners, and factory differential locks, a combination that gave it genuine all-terrain capability without the compromises that part-time systems imposed on highway driving. In the Gulf, families who owned an 80 Series in the 1990s didn't own a car. They owned a lifestyle: Friday desert trips, coastal camping, mountain excursions. The 80 Series made all of it effortless. And then Toyota replaced it, and those families spent the next 3 decades quietly comparing everything that followed to the truck they still hadn't gotten over. Clean 80 Series examples in the Middle East now command $25,000 to $60,000. Prices that climb every year as the generation that grew up in them starts earning enough to buy them back. The truck every Gulf father never got over. The next SUV didn't create memories. It created an entire culture of 1,000 horsepower desert insanity. Number 3, Nissan Patrol Y60, 1987 to 1997. The Nissan Patrol Y60 didn't just participate in Middle Eastern desert culture, it invented it. Before the Y60 arrived, driving in the desert was something you did because you had to. The Y60 turned it into something you did because you wanted to, because the combination of the TD 42 4.2-liter diesel's bottomless torque and the Y60's solid axles created a vehicle that could climb sand dunes with a confidence that made the impossible look routine. Every weekend dune convoy, every 1,000 horsepower turbo build, every viral video of an SUV launching itself over a sand ridge, all of it traces back to the Y60. In the UAE and Saudi Arabia, the Y60 has transcended transportation entirely. Modified Y60s with barrel drum turbochargers, stripped interiors, and nylon sand tires producing over 1,000 horsepower are a regular feature of desert gatherings across the Gulf. One automotive journalist watched a modified Y60 blast past at full throttle and wrote, "There goes a man who is also mental." That single sentence captures the Y60's position in Gulf culture perfectly. A vehicle that inspires equal parts admiration and genuine concern for the mental health of its driver. A clean, unmodified Y60 is now almost impossible to find in the Middle East because the vast majority have been gutted and rebuilt into desert weapons. That makes original examples genuinely rare. The same truck that was once the cheapest way to enter desert culture is now the most expensive way to preserve its history. The SUV that turned the desert from a commute into a culture. The next one has been in production for over 40 years. And you can still buy it new because the Middle East won't allow it to die. Number 2, Toyota Land Cruiser 70 Series, 1984 to present. The Toyota Land Cruiser 70 Series has been in continuous production for over 40 years. And in the Middle East, it is still the vehicle you buy when the truck breaking down isn't an inconvenience, it's a survival emergency. Oil companies in Saudi Arabia's empty quarter deploy 70 Series trucks because a breakdown in the Rub al Khali at midday in July means 60-degree surface temperatures and no shade for 100 kilometers. The 70 Series is the vehicle that ensures that scenario stays hypothetical rather than becoming a headline. You can walk into a Toyota dealership in Saudi Arabia, UAE, Oman, or Kuwait right now and buy a brand new Land Cruiser 70 Series, a vehicle whose fundamental design hasn't changed since 1984 because the Middle East told Toyota in no uncertain terms that changing it would be a mistake. The naturally aspirated diesel engines fitted to Middle Eastern versions run on low-quality fuel without complaint. And every mechanic in every town in every Gulf state can service one without a single diagnostic tool. The 70 Series trust in the Middle East isn't emotional the way the Patrol trust is emotional. It's functional. Nobody posts Instagram photos of a 70 Series. Nobody names their desert convoy after it. But when a convoy gets stuck in soft sand at sunset and needs to be pulled out before dark, every single person in that convoy looks for the 70 series first, because the 70 series is always there, always running, and always capable. Toyota couldn't kill it because the desert wouldn't let them. 40 years in production because the Middle East wouldn't allow Toyota to stop. Only one SUV carries even deeper trust, and the manufacturer literally brought it back from the dead. Number 1, Nissan Patrol Y61, 1997 to present. The Nissan Patrol Y61 is the only vehicle in the global automotive industry that a manufacturer officially discontinued and then restarted production for because one region's demand was too powerful to ignore. Nissan ended Y61 production in 2016 after a 19-year run. The Middle East responded by refusing to accept the decision, continuing to buy used Y61 at prices that defied logic, maintaining dealership waiting lists for a vehicle that no longer existed, and making it unmistakably clear that the Y61 was not a truck they were prepared to live without. Nissan listened. The Y61 is back in production and available brand new at dealerships across the UAE and Saudi Arabia. A truck designed in 1997, sold new in 2026, because the Middle East trusts it more than anything built since. The TB48 DE 4.8 liter inline-6 petrol engine is the reason. Built with tolerances that survive heat cycling that destroys modern turbocharged engines, it has become the beating heart of Gulf dune bashing culture. The Super Safari trim, developed exclusively for the Middle Eastern market, comes with a snorkel, roof rack, underbody protection, and desert-specific engineering that tells buyers Nissan understands what trust means here. Generations of Emiratis and expats grew up with the Y61. It's the SUV your uncle took you dune bashing in, the one that never quit, even when the AC failed in July. That kind of trust isn't built in showrooms or earned through advertising campaigns. It's earned in the sand, over decades, by a truck that simply never let anyone down. The SUV a manufacturer brought back from the dead because the Middle East refused to let it die. That's not brand loyalty. That's not nostalgia. That's trust. And no vehicle on earth has earned more of it. From a Suzuki that weighs less than a horse to a Nissan Patrol that a manufacturer brought back from the dead. 12 SUVs that earn their trust in the sand, not in showrooms. The desert doesn't care about your badge. The desert cares whether you start tomorrow morning. These 12 start every morning. Which one would you trust with your life? Tell us in the comments. Subscribe.